How's it going, everyone, and welcome back to another MFL video on the channel. In today's video I'm going to be talking about how I've done my scouting so far in this game. I've got my beer here with us because Liverpool have just won the league. Fantastic day. It's been a long time coming. So today I'm just going to be going through some of the methods that I've used so far to find players and how I would recommend for you to do it as well. So let's just get into it. So here we are on the MFL site. This method that I've been using to find a lot of my players is something that I talked a little bit about in my last video, which is trying to use like a stats based approach. Obviously you've got the overalls of players. I'll just have a look at a few of these here as some examples. So for example, let's have a look at, I don't know, this guy here. He's an 88 rated, but he's a centre back. So in terms of centre back, you'd think the most important stats probably pace, defence, physical. So obviously he's got 94 defence, which is really, really good. But you look at his pace, 78, and his physical, 79. They're not too good. His overall is probably brought up by his passing and his dribbling, but overall I wouldn't say that's an 88 rated player. Whereas you look at someone like this guy, who is 94 rated, but he has got 95 pace and 96 defence. So basically that's what I've been trying to take into my scouting methods. I've got a different filter for each of the different positions based on which of the attributes I think are most important for that position. So I'll go through a few of the examples that I've made so far. So for a centre back, for example, obviously this depends on the formation that you're playing. If you're playing a 3-back formation, you might, there might be a little bit less area to cover, so you might have, you might lower your pace a little bit, and you might increase your defending, or you might increase your passing because maybe you're playing a ball playing style with a 3-back formation. But for my formation in my team at the moment, I've got a 4-2-3-1. So what I've done is I've gone through some of the attributes and sort of made like a filter of the right type of player that I want. And you'll notice that it's not based on overall, because a lot of people will look at a player who might be like 60 overall and they won't even look at his stats because they think, I'm not having a 60 overall player in my team. I might be wrong on this, obviously, as I say, I'm new, but I don't know how much overall has an effect in the game as opposed to actual stats. So if anyone knows about that, then you can let us know in the comments if I'm wrong. But I would assume, based on how the engine works, that the stats are the most important thing. So if I have a little look on the left here, as you can see, centre back position, only primary position. This is because I don't want players who can play centre back like on a green position. So if you have a look at, I don't know, this guy for example, he can play centre back and it's like dark green, which just means it's his primary position. Whereas he can play left back, but if he does play left back, his overall and his stats will be slightly decreased. And if you play him in a defensive midfielder or right back, his stats will be even further increased. And something you can do, a site that I've used, which can really help with this, is MFL player info. So what you do is you get this ID here, so 2886, and it will give you some information about how this player is rated in different positions. So as you can see, if you put him as centre back, he's 83 rated, but if you move him to left back, which as it says on here is a position that he can play, he does go down to 72. And if you put him right back, it goes down to 65. And for an 83 rated, that is, you're not making the most of your player. So that's why I've got only primary position selected. This max age, it just depends on what you're after. Like if you really want some high potential young players, you might want to put this to 24, 25. If you're not interested about the age, then you can just remove this and all. And I mean, you will get some pretty good bargains as opposed to having an age of, like, say, max 26, but I've just got that for my personal preferences. And then you get into the stats. So for centre back, you don't want them to be exceptionally slow, so you don't want them to have 40, 30 pace. So I'll put mine as 62. Obviously this depends on the level that you're going to be at. If you're in the Spark division, you might only need sort of high 50s in these stats, but if you're in, like, say, bronze, silver, gold, you're going to have to adjust it as to the division that you're in and how you want to play your game. So it might take a little bit of thinking about how you want your team to play and which stats you would say are important for that position, that specific position. But I'll put mine as 62. I've put the defence as 65, physical 60, because I think those are the three most important stats for a centre back, as I mentioned before. And it'll come up with a list here. Another one you might want to put on, which has stung a few people, and it has stung me as well, is you put on free agent, because you might look at this guy, for example, and think, yeah, he looks really good, and you go to buy him, but he is contracted until the end of season 5, which means that you can buy him now, like, you can buy him, but you will not be able to use him for this season 5. So, you know, you've got to keep that in mind. So you might want to put free agent on as well. And then what you can do is you can just search it by price, put the cheapest first, and you might often see some bargains. Say like if this was £20 and the next most expensive was £50, you're thinking you know that's a really good deal. If say this is above your budget or you want to make some adjustments, you can do that. And then what I would recommend doing is you can only have 5 filters, but if you pick the positions that you are most important in your team, or the positions that you're looking for players in, then you can just toggle between them and check them whenever you're on the site and see if you can end up picking a bargain. Or you can look at these players and say, something that I've been doing, for example, is you see like a load of players, say 30, 40, but one of them is, you've got 26, 22-year-old, and you think, well, he's the same price as these other players who are of a similar rating and a similar level, but he's quite a lot younger, which means he has a lot more time. He has time on his side. You've got a lot more utility for him over the years. So he's probably a better value, really. And another thing about MFL Player Info is that you can pick a player, say this guy for example, and you can see what similar players of his ability are going for, to let you know whether you think it's a decent deal. So for example, this guy, you might look at this and say, well, $42, the next one's $50, so it might be a good deal. But then you go in here and you see, well, players of similar rating of his go for $23. That is also considering that this guy has good, or what you would define as good attributes for that position. So players who are going for $23 who are centre backs might actually have 40 pace and 60 defending. So you've got to keep that in mind as well. Another way to check the players that you're looking at, whether they're a good deal or not, is using MFL Assistant. I'll leave the links to all of these in the description. But you might want to look at, let's say, 72 rated centre backs here, 26, and you can put in 72 rated 26-year-old centre back, and it'll show you over the last however long you want to say, the last week or the last month, players of this age, position, and rating. What have they sold for? So as we mentioned before, the lowest one on the market at the moment is $35. So you might look at this guy and say, yeah, he's 72 rated. Like, players go for this around that amount. You know, you've got a few up here for 50. You've got this one for 17, which was probably went really quickly last night. It's a really good deal. And you can think, and you can just kind of rationalize it in your head. Think whether, you know, use the site to find these players, and then use MFL Player Info and MFL Assistant to sort of rationalize whether those seem like a good price for you. I can have another video where I go through all the different filters if you want, but I think it's more based on your team and your situation. So as I said about the age, like you might want players who are 30-year-old. You might not care about the age. You might not care they've only got a few years if you're looking for like a cheaper player. And you've got to kind of, you know, if you got a system where you're going to have an attacking right back, you might want to consider passing and dribbling as really important stats, and you would want to have a filter on those. Whereas for mine, I've gone pretty basic with pace and defence. Like those are the two most important in my opinion for a defender. And as you can see here, there's one for 40 and the next for 22. So if I was looking for a right back right now, I might think that's quite a good deal. Obviously, say he's 27 compared to 24, 23-year-olds. So, you know, there's a lot to consider. But this is how I've been finding my players, and obviously it works the same on loans as well. Say again, if you wanted to get, let's say, a defensive midfielder, you are in the ICE division. Let's leave the accepted rev share for now. Age doesn't really matter when you're having a loan, because it's only for one season, so you know that you will be okay for that season. But let's say, I don't know, 58 pace. Let's say you want pretty good defender on a defensive midfielder. You're gonna want some okay passing, and you might want some pretty decent physical. And that'll filter it down for you, and you can sort of look down here and say, okay, this guy's 61 rated, but he fits all the categories that I'm looking for, and he looks like quite a good player for 2%. And he can play a few positions. So this would be someone who I'd think, if I was looking for a defensive midfielder on loan, you know, you've got these players who have similar stats to him, probably a little bit better, but actually he's on the loan market because he's 30 as well, so people will be a little bit put off by that. But if you're getting him on loan, I think that, you know, that's the type of player you should really be looking for. So yeah, that's what I wanted to do for this video. Hopefully that was helpful for some people, and if it was, then feel free to leave a like and subscribe. I'm going to be making more content over the coming weeks as season 5 comes closer and closer. I think it's starting on Wednesday this week, so only a couple of days to go. Let me know how your preparations for the season are going on in the comments. I'd love to hear it, and if you got any questions, then let me know. As I said, the Dapper Disney offer is still going on until the 30th, so if you haven't taken use of it yet and you want to get $25 of credits for only a £7 purchase, then I'll leave the link for that in the comments as well. So yeah, thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.